Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, so in this episode, I want to try to say something about the German philosopher Schopenhauer, and in particular about one of his more famous quotes. The quote goes like this. It goes, "Our intellect is like a lame man who can see, riding on the shoulders of a strong, blind giant." So, what's going on here? What's he trying to say exactly? Well, I don't know. Maybe the best place to start here is, well, at the dawn of Western philosophy. That's to say, what I want to try to do is I want to try to start with Plato. Okay, so Plato is often called a rationalist. Now, why is this exactly? Well, I think it's basically because what he believed is that we ideally identify and pursue certain goals by our reason first. And only after that do we use our will or desire to help us achieve these goals. In other words, it's something like our pure and unbridled intelligence that's in charge and determines our goals. And only after does this intelligence of ours mobilize our will or desire for the pursuit of these goals. For Plato, then, human nature is ideally intellectual. And so I think you could say that for our desires to dominate would be, well, it would be a corruption of our nature as the rational beings that we are. Now, Plato's influence in this regard would be pretty enormous and far-reaching. I mean, the great Descartes, for example, over 1700 years later, would also uphold a kind of rationalism, a preeminence of the understanding or the intellect over the will. And actually, this sort of thinking, this emphasis on the pride of place of reason, would pretty much extend all the way through the scientific revolution to the Enlightenment of the 17th and 18th century. Now, okay, here's the thing. Of course, not all philosophers held to rationalist views like this. No, for example, Thomas Hobbes and David Hume are, let's say, two early dissenters. That's to say, in their own way, they both believed that reason or intelligence is ultimately subordinate to will or desire, not the other way around. I mean, I think Hobbes essentially thought that all human behavior is based on pain and pleasure or desire and aversion. And Hume, well, he famously said that reason is only the slave of the passions. But I would say it's not until Schopenhauer, and then after him, Nietzsche and Sigmund Freud, that we get a kind of radical critique of rationalism. You see, for Schopenhauer, reason, well, that's definitely something that's relegated to a subordinate role. More specifically, reason is just a kind of servant to the larger life force that Schopenhauer called the will to life. That's to say, our reason or intelligence is actually entirely in bondage to our much more powerful, unconscious, and irrational desire to perpetuate life. To go back to the quote, it's intelligence and reason that's the lame man, and it's this will to life that's the blind giant. Now, why is this giant blind exactly? Well, because Schopenhauer doesn't believe that the will to life had any real kind of goal. It's just a continuous, frenzied, purposeless striving with no final end or any kind of resolution in sight. Anyway, so what's so interesting here about this view, Schopenhauer's view, is that we're not, as traditionally thought, some kind of special and distinct species of being marked out by our capacity for reason and intelligence. No, for Schopenhauer, the fact of the matter is that we're simply in line with animals. We're equally driven, like them, by instincts and desires ingrained deep down inside. So this special and lofty dignity the philosopher Immanuel Kant talked about, that he claimed that we humans had, not true. We don't occupy any kind of pedestal, despite the long tradition that claims that we do. No, we're just as natural as and as identical to the animals that we share the earth with. And here's the thing. We're just as oblivious as them when it comes to our true motivations. In other words, what's really going on, according to Schopenhauer's view, is that life governs everything behind reason's back. That's to say, what ultimately makes us do the things we do lies well beneath the reach of reason. And so, really, we don't have the autonomous human agency that we think we do. No, life is something like a subterranean ocean in which we humans swim, pushed and pulled by its forces. And here I should actually probably say something about Schopenhauer's view on sex and love, because it's pretty relevant. You see, not surprisingly, Schopenhauer takes our drive for sex as the most powerful manifestation of this impersonal will to life. This is what we all really want unconsciously. In other words, what draws us together with another is the goal of reproduction. Okay, so the love stories that we tell ourselves around this, well, that's all basically a delusion, even though we aren't fully aware of this. Love is deep down really just a kind of dressed up version of this desire for sex and reproduction. And we see this, Schopenhauer says, because once we have reproduced, our love just sort of ebbs away. Yikes. Okay, anyway, now for Schopenhauer, and also for Nietzsche, by the way, what this also means, that life governs behind reason's back, is that our intellect is not some privileged faculty engaged in a totally pure or unbiased manner in understanding the world. We don't see the world transparently. No, because our intellect is an instrument of these larger life forces, it's always colored or infected by motives and interests that we're not aware of. So if we see through a glass darkly, to quote Corinthians. And again, that's because the will is our first and deepest wellspring of motivation and our most fundamental means of interaction with the world, even if we're not consciously aware of it. And so ultimately, if truth is something that's disclosed to us, it's not by our intellect, but it's by our bodies and our passions and the unconscious. As Nietzsche tells us, who was deeply influenced by Schopenhauer, by the way, there is more wisdom in your body than there is in your deepest philosophy. Bye for now.